here, spawning in the north of the map. We have ZertoN playing in blue as the Chinese, spawning in the south of the map. We have Mixu playing as the Chinese 2 in the color red, playing on Hill and Dale. I am Pesti, founder of EGC, and casting with me is Lidakor. What are you thinking, Lidakor? A Chinese mirror, pretty clear civilization pick for this map, being a very boomy map. Your thoughts?
Oh, there's a lot of interesting things to talk about here. First of all, this is the second mirror matchup of the series. Now, based on game number 1, that should be something that makes ZertoN very, very happy. And we can say the same things about this mirror matchup as we discussed in game number 1 with the Mongols. Mongols is a very flexible civilization, so are the Chinese. So, once again, this map is very well defendable, pretty good for booming. This being said, we have seen a ton of aggression put up in previous tournaments on this map as well, so it's very possible with the Chinese using a supervised archer range and the barracks to put up a very nice feudal age ramp push. So you can't just sit back and say, okay, I'm going to boom, because either of these players could go in and just kill you in feudal age. So the most important thing I do believe here for these players is to scout what the opponent is doing. You need to know if there's any kind of pressure coming. I think going for the economy approach is a little safer, but once again, you can't neglect the possibility of a potential early aggression from the Chinese on this matchup.
That's very interesting. So, of course, one of those things that happens if one player decides to go for that early aggression, the other's going all out boom, it can equal disaster. Not that different from what we saw with Viper against Nush, even though of course that included the French. Lidakor, what are you calling? Are you calling that we're going to see early aggression from one player, or are you thinking we're going to see an out and out boom fest here?
I think we're going to see a boom fest. That's just the reason. The reason why I'm thinking that is because that's the safest way to play this one. ZertoN doesn't need to go for an aggressive approach because he's already up one game, whereas for Mixu he's down one game. So going for something very risky that could lose him the game is quite a risky decision to make. And you see there is ZertoN coming in for the stone mining, so that's a sign that he's going to play 2 town centers. And this is the type of thing that you're looking for if you're Mixu. Scout that stone mine. See if your opponent is indeed going for the eco-focused approach, or if he's thinking about some sort of aggression. Looking at Mixu, I don't see a stone mine just yet, but obviously, as I said before, you can piece those things on top of each other with Chinese in different order. You can go for Song Dynasty first and only then add the second town center, or even go for Castle Age first. There are a lot of options here for the Chinese, but I would expect standard Song Dynasty 2 TC boom for ZertoN with professional scouts faring in there, and I still think that Mixu is going to do something very similar, I think.
Interesting. So that's going to be interesting to see what's going to happen. We see the Imperial Official there being used to boost the wood generation and also gather tax from the lumber camp. So we've got the other Imperial Official boosting the food income from the mill. So be interesting to see if you're right, Lidakor, and this turns into a full boom fest. ZertoN showing some attacking prowess in the last game, so it'd be very interesting to see if he likes doing the same. ZertoN's a player with a bit of a reputation for that aggressive style. Of course, this was Mixu's home map, so it might have been that ZertoN would have preferred an open map, but once your opponent picks Hinnendale, there's not really an aggressive option to deal with that. You're going to get walled out so fast that you basically have to do a Chinese mirror. That might be advantage Mixu just in him clearly wanting to have played China on this map. We're going to have to wait and find out very soon. In the meantime, we've got the age up coming in there from ZertoN. Do we have Mixu yet also aging up?
Yes, indeed. The difference in the approaches is that Mixu is going to play it a little safer. He's going to play with the Barbican of the Sun just to make sure that there is no chance for aggression coming through in the middle. Whereas for ZertoN, you see, ZertoN is 100% confident that he's not going to get pushed because he's going for the Imperial Academy. He didn't vote at all, no Barbican of the Sun. For all he knows, there could be a big army gathering over here. But he's confident that his opponent is not going to push him because he sees that stone mine. So he can say, okay, if I'm not getting pushed, I'm going to play with a landmark that gives me a better economy boost, and that is the Imperial Academy.
Absolutely. I mean, so whose decision making do you personally like better to this point? Of course, I guess there's not really a wrong answer. They've chosen similar but different approaches. Uh, whose whose position would you, if you had to be planted into one player's position right now, who would you like? Where would you like to be?
I think I would like to be in ZertoN's position because I know exactly what my opponent is doing. I see that he's going up with the Barbican of the Sun, and I'm already dropping my second town center. I have an Imperial Academy up, so I can grab the examinations upgrade for the better tax gold income. In general, I'm able to get a decent amount of tax gold already, whereas you see, Mixu is just now reaching feudal age here. So I think ZertoN is at least one step ahead here.
Very interesting. So we'll have to see how that plays out. Now, of course, this is one of those maps where there is always going to be a bit of a lull in the fighting and the action as both players somewhat compete to outboom the other. Probably among the boomiest of all of the maps, hence why the civilizations were picked. So it's going to be very interesting to see if either of the players do something to kind of differentiate themselves from the other.
Looking at...
Now,
yeah, go ahead.
you go ahead, Lidakor.
So, at this point, we have one officer out for ZertoN and already two officers out for Mixu. ZertoN would probably benefit from a second officer as well, simply because keeping that mill supervised all the time would be very valuable for his food economy, and he can use the second one to gather that tax gold income that he has gotten on the stone and on that lumber camp. So, personally, I would prefer one more tax collector, but not the end of the world. What's more interesting is that ZertoN is still mining stone over here, so it's very possible that he's going up to 3 town centers, making it an even bigger boom fest. Whereas on the other side, Mixu, I don't think that he's been mining gold so far. He's sending villagers to gold right now, which is a sign that he's thinking about Song Dynasty, but he's also on a ton of stones, so this could very well be 3 town center Song Dynasty boom for both players, and indeed it is for ZertoN. Town center number 3 coming in. Once again, ZertoN is just one step ahead compared to his opponent.
And we can say it once, we'll say it again. In these mirror matchups, being 30 seconds ahead, 20 seconds ahead is just absolutely massive. They are, in every mirror matchup, they are generally won and lost on very small mistakes or on slightly better execution. So the fact that ZertoN is those 20 seconds ahead on that third town center, getting that military that villager production out slightly quicker, that just snowballs and snowballs and snowballs the later it gets in the game. Now, of course, that can be overcome if Mixu has one significant military victory at some point, but it does make life difficult. Now, is this Palisade Wall going to be denied over here?
It's a possibility.
Probably not.
I feel like ZertoN will sacrifice that villager if he needs to. He wants to make that wall happen, because if there's any kind of regression coming, that has to come through right now. Mixu is actually bloody blocking that wall, so what you want to do is pull your villager a little more inwards, make the scout follow, and then you can try walling it in. You see Mixu reacting perfectly, but ultimately, he can't stop that wall. As I said, I feel like ZertoN would have been very happy to sacrifice that villager for that wall as well. He needs to make sure that those walls go up, because now we're getting to a stage where you could have aggression come up any moment, right? You see that ZertoN's scout wasn't really active in this Dale area, so he really doesn't know what Mixu is up to now.
Absolutely, Lidakor. And now we see Mixu putting down stone walls, blocking off, so making the boom even bigger. Now, it's one of those interesting situations. This players, of course, don't know that neither player is accumulating any military or has any desire whatsoever to make a push at this stage. And when that happens, it's just a game of who's able to effectively boom the most. Basically, which player is most aware that his opponent is not massing military and is therefore booming most unabated and not holding back at all from the boom, because that's all that's going on right now. Both players are booming, and even one player holding back a little bit and sacrificing the extent and pace of that boom can have a huge impact.
You see, they are head-to-head in villagers. It's 49 versus 47. Song Dynasty coming in at the same time for both. The only thing I kind of dislike for ZertoN here is that he's only at 1 officer. So I feel like Mixu's actually doing a better job with that, although supervising that stone mine is no longer relevant. But I really like this approach. Look at this. He still has a ton of sheep together, supervising that mill to get the maximum effect out of that. Whereas if you compare that to ZertoN, that's not really there. And that's just some resources he's losing because of that. Villagers dropping it off at the town center and not at the mill. that would be supervised is also something that hurts. So ideally what you would want to have here is all the sheep close to the mill and that officer supervising it. But since you only have one, ZertoN one is just going to keep gathering tax instead of supervising. So I think Mixu has a slightly better eco management here in Feudal Age.
And that might go back to what we were discussing shortly ago, that this is, you always know when a player picks a home map that this is the civilization that he intended to play. So Mixu clearly wanting to play China, clearly plays China a lot, picked the map in order to play China, and now you're seeing very clean execution. Tells a story of a player that likes playing this civilization.
Absolutely. I feel like everybody likes playing Chinese nowadays. It's very nice to see that the Chinese became a favorite of the players, at least on the slow maps, because I do remember that in the first major AoE 4 event, EGC Genesis, there were not a single instance in the main event of Chinese or Holy Roman Empire being picked, and nowadays, people are starting to appreciate them a little more, especially Chinese. Everybody was like, oh yeah, Chinese is the worst civilization. And back at that time, or quite a lot of people felt that Chinese are not bad, they just need to be figured out, and it takes a lot of time to figure them out because they just have so much depth with the dynasty system, the supervisors. Now that people figure them out, they are starting to like Chinese, especially on maps where you can have an untouched boom. So slower paced maps like Hillandale, like Altai, Chinese is now one of the best civilizations.
Absolutely. Yeah, definitely found its speciality there. 100% agree with you. I think most players would probably consider China the best civilization if booming unabated. Um, Maybe what China suffers from in terms of these tier lists is that it is not necessarily the most flexible civilization, and it's not going to be very strong on open maps. In the meantime, we've got the astronomical clock tower being put down here from ZertoN, who's aging up a very, very powerful H3 landmark from the Chinese, going to produce some pretty incredible siege. Maybe you can tell us a little bit more about that, Lidakor.
Astronomical Clock Tower is going to be pretty much a mandatory landmark to age up with. This is usually what you open up, even though you are going to use the Imperial Palace as well as your second Castle Age landmark once you get to Yuan Dynasty, because ultimately you want to play Fire Lancers, and Fire Lancers will require the Yuan Dynasty and the Imperial Palace. The reason why you go for the Clock Tower first is because this basically allows you to react to any kind of aggression that could come your way. So if your opponent is trying to push you with spears and archers, then you have the chance to go for Nest of Bees, and ultimately, in late game, the Clock Tower Bombards will be your number one unit. Chinese Bombards have 12 range, and they also have more health when they are produced from the Clock Tower. So they have very high range, very high HP. One of the most powerful late game units in this game is the Chinese Bombards from the Clock Tower. So part of the reason why Chinese are a much beloved civilization in slow maps is because not only is their economy powerful, their unit composition late game is phenomenal. The Bombards, the Fire Lancers, potentially Grenadiers, so many things to love about the Chinese Imperial Age army.
Now, another thing we're seeing from ZertoN here is a real lack of lumber camps in his base. So he's walking a very long way. If you look at some of that lumber he's chopping, he's basically walking that a little bit too far. Really probably wants to put another lumber camp down there. Some of them are actually even walking back to the town center. Lots of wasted villager seconds. And I mean, he is supervising them with the Imperial official, which is, of course, going to speed it up a bit. Taking a look at the score, 200 score gap opening up, but I think unless the score gap is more than 500 or 600, doesn't tend to tell too much. Now, the real question for me, which is going to be the player that's going to choose to take the role of the offender in this situation, which is going to be the one that's going to go out there and start putting some aggression on, start sieging down some walls, making his opponent get a little bit nervous and sweaty. And taking a look at what's going on now, I mean, Mixu looks to have been the first one to start creating military units with those palace guards dropping out. Any reason to believe it's not going to be Mixu that's going to be the first one going out there and pressuring?
I think that he's just going for relics at this point. Ultimately, it is a Fire Lancer play. You see that there is already the next landmark coming in. That's, I think, the Imperial Age landmark for ZertoN, and it's actually the Gatehouse, not even the Spirit Way, which is a little unconventional. I would still expect him to go for the Spirit Way at some point, but I'm actually very surprised that we're seeing the Gatehouse being used over here from him. Anyways, it looks like he's going to play the good old-fashioned Palace Guards play. His opponent is already getting some monks out to try and pick up the relics. Let's see if Mixu is going to continue with Palace Guards or Fire Lancers. Now, when it comes to Fire Lancers, they would die to Spearmen if the Spearmen brace. But obviously the Palace Guards will die very, very easily to Fire Lancers. ZertoN up to Imperial Age already. We'll see if he's going to get to Yuan Dynasty. Whereas for Mixu, he could click to Imperial Age right now, and he's still in Song Dynasty. But as the players are getting close to that 120, 130 villager mark, they will start thinking about giving up on Song Dynasty and going for Yuan. Once again, it's a decision point, just as much as the timing of your second town center versus the timing of your Song Dynasty. That's a decision point. So is the decision between Imperial Age first and then Yuan Dynasty, or the other way around.
Now, oh, we're seeing a wall a lot. Are we finding? Oh,
Nope.
Active R in the chat for it. Never. I think did we not have an emote for a Wallalo? I think we've got a. We have an emote for a Wallalo. I'm going to say there's an emote for a Wallalo, but either way, unfortunately, didn't happen. I don't think we've ever had in an EGC event a successful Wallalo live, unfortunately, and it didn't happen there either. So. Seeing both players now in Imperial, do I spot a cannon moving its way across the field there? And so it looks like ZertoN's going to go and try and put a little bit of pressure on his opponent. Scores. Now, ZertoN's pulled a little bit of head, probably doesn't mean too much. Putting up the tower next to that sacred site to try and take it for that extra bit of gold. Looks like he's about to come in and take that at least, especially now that it's got some protection.
Yeah, it looks like he realized that his opponent is going for relics, and he doesn't want his opponent to have all of those, because that could be a difference maker in a mirror matchup late game, that gold trickle. So he's going out for relics, which I kind of like. He's fortifying the map with towers, which will give him two things. A, it will give him firepower if he gets the springboard or cannon emplacements on it. B, it will give him vision. Notice the amount of vision he already has on the map, and of course, it also protects these sacred sites. Now, the problem that he's facing is that his opponent is getting those nasty stables up, and we all know what that means. There is the Imperial Palace, so the Spirit Way, with its ability to decrease the cost as well, will allow those Fire Lancers to be very, very cheap. So unless ZertoN mixes in some Spearmen against the Fire Lancers, I feel like his army would just get wiped off the field here very soon. I think Mixu just needs to play patient, get like 15 Fire Lancers, and then make one charge here.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you there, Lidakor. Now, the question is, are we going to see panic from Mixu here? Because I totally agree. Mixu needs to show a little bit of patience, get that mass together, because if he gets those Fire Lancers together, takes out those cannons, he's going to be able to just absolutely race across the map and do some huge damage. If he goes out just a little bit too early, he risks losing that mass, and if he loses a smaller mass of Fire Lancers, it's just going to be GG with the situation that ZertoN's in right now. So Mixu's got, for me, a clear win condition at this point. It's just about whether he can execute.
Surprising decision from Mixu over here to go for Ancient Techniques first. It's going to help, but I would have expected him to go Pyrotechnics, given the fact that he's got some Bombards in here to defend. And I just want to give some credit to ZertoN here, who is walling up with Stone Walls, which is very clever here. Because the Fire Lancers can't get through Stone Walls without Siege. So you can't just have 15-20 Fire Lancers run up and burn down the walls, run into your base if there is Stone Walls out there. They need to wait for the Siege support. So this way he sort of prevents the Fire Lancers from charging into his base directly. This being said, those numbers are slowly increasing, and I believe that unless we're seeing Spearmen in here, that's going to be difficult for ZertoN to deal with. But once he's got a good number of Spearmen up, he's perfectly fine, because the Fire Lancers only deliver their explosive blast when they charge in. And guess what? The Spearmen bracing will prevent them from charging in. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that the Chinese Spearmen don't have the brace bug. The Holy Roman Empire and Delhi Spears do, but the Chinese Spearmen should be able to brace.
I believe you're right, and in the meantime, I mean, ZertoN just did, I would say, a not insignificant a not insignificant, sorry, amount of damage to the base of Mixu there. I mean, we saw quite a lot of damage done. Not impossible to come back from, but he definitely made his presence feel. Those cannons just absolutely raced through buildings so quickly. So not going to be feeling bad there. In the meantime, I think we see a sacred site being captured by ZertoN, which is going to help his gold income. Although apparently not anymore. He was briefly converting it. Now continuing to move in, continuing to pile on that pressure. A bit of a Fire Lancer raid coming in here from
this could be the
and
deciding
these,
factor.
oh no, oh god, if they connect with those villages, oh, they've got through the wall, and if they connect with these villages, it's going to be absolutely disgusting. In the meantime, oh, what's going to happen here? How many cannons? A battle of the cannons. One cannon goes down there from Mixu. Cannon goes down there for both players. Huge fight happening here. Looks like a victory in the cannon war going to happen from ZertoN. I don't know how many villages were lost on the north of the map there, but not an insignificant number. Lots of cannons were lost though there for now. Now, are there enough? No, those guards are doing very good damage to the cavalry. He's going to try and come around and take them out. They're continuing to shred through buildings, but it looks like Mixu has enough units to repel this, and if he doesn't get these cannons back quick enough, he's going to lose them.
Oh boy, ultimately the lack of spearmen is going to haunt ZertoN. I was staying silent for a long time here because this was one of the biggest and most interesting points in this entire game. So, at this point, ZertoN almost got his stone walls up. Had he gotten these stone walls up, these Fire Lancers couldn't have done anything, and then he just marches into the opponent's base with like 10 cannon, and he can focus down every single landmark and win this game in 5 seconds. The problem for him was lack of spearmen, and now you see he's getting punished for that. Significant amounts of cannon going down the drain here, and the Fire Lancers, if they're allowed to charge in, they will just massacre everything. This being said, the Fire Lancers are still being ground down here by spearmen, so Mixu still needs to be careful. Still, Mixu's base took quite a bit of a beating over here. He wasn't really expecting a push straight into his base, I do believe.
I think that you're right. Oh, uh-oh. I see a number of villagers possibly being lost here. Oh god, oh my god, and oh, it's an absolute massacre, those villagers dropping. Oh, that must have been 8, 10, 12 villagers gone. There were a lot of villagers around that gold mine, and just watching those Fire Lancers get in on villages is one of the most disgusting things in AoE 4. It's just absolutely tragic to see happen. They're so fast. He is now running them into the spears, which is a bit of a misplay. He's going to lose a number of them to those spears. I think possibly misclick there, but probably not enough to make up for the number of villages that were just lost. That was brutal.
Ultimately, the villager counts are still pretty even. The thing that's concerning for ZertoN is that his opponent's army is now fairly powerful. That big mass of Fire Lancers is just very dangerous because obviously the Spearmen are capable of stopping them. I feel like the biggest thing with Fire Lancers though is that their upside is just so big. One bad move and you lose your entire army or eco to the Fire Lancers. And you see now the cannon are blasting through the walls. I think if Mixu starts mixing in some Nest of Bees or Palace Guards himself, he's gonna be able to wipe this army off the field because the Palace Guards would just take down the Spearmen, or technically he can just brute force this one, burn down the barracks and prevent the Spearmen from even being produced.
The Spearmen just absolutely shred through the Fire Lancers. The problem is they're so fast, it's you don't always get a chance to get on top of them. Now those cannons are gonna... I mean, ZertoN's actually doing okay right now getting those Spearmen on top of the Fire Lancers. He just lost so many cannons in his opponent's base when he maybe overcommitted. That being said, ZertoN now doing a good job of pushing this back, and that is not the keep is not going to last very long. It's going to go down very quick as long as it's undefended, which it currently is. And there it goes. And very swingy game, and all of a sudden, ZertoN's the one that's repelled this attack, and Mixu's the one, at least unlike his opponents, not lost too many of those cannons. He is going to retreat them back in time and protect them.
I feel like Mixu was overestimating the capabilities of Fire Lancers. It's a powerful unit, and really the only answer to it is a Spearman that braces, but boy oh boy, Spearman bracing will just disintegrate the Fire Lancers. And you see, ZertoN is playing a very smart game. He's fortifying his base everywhere with stone walls, leaving no room for those Fire Lancers to run in. Mixu is now trying to react with some Palace Guards, but his numbers aren't impressive. We're talking about like 5-6 Palace Guards. And you see, in general, Mixu's military population is 65, but many of them are just cannon. And at this point, the spearmen are just swarming into his base. This might be game over for Mixu.
Yeah, ZertoN there just not keeping his units together smartly. He's actually just in 5 different places and dispersed those spears all over the base, and Mixu all of a sudden huge APM pressure as he's got units now wrecking havoc in every corner of his base. Villagers going down, spearmen ripping apart fire lancers, and we are seeing a house situation now for Mixu as well, who's not able to create any more units unless he very, very quickly gets some houses up. He is going to be in a world of pain. This looks very, very problematic right now. If you are Mixu, unable to produce units, and if as soon as these cannons go down, he's not going to be able to replace them. A couple of them on low HP, one goes down. Oh, we're looking at a big problem, I think, here for Mixu.
Yeah, he's in a tough situation right now, especially if you look at his economy. His entire food economy is idled. That's still a big mass of fire lancers, and he's been able to get some nice charges in. But that's the drawback that you're suffering from when you're using villages instead of houses. One village going down is going to hit your population quite heavily, and you just see the entire base of Mixu feels like an entire big rubble. Both tutelage landmarks gone, the clock tower gone, the town center is on fire, and just barren farmlands everywhere. That's the biggest problem for Mixu. So even if he can take one good fight over here, I wonder how he's gonna be able to replenish his army, because his economy is next to non-existent.
Yeah, it's been a recurring theme in these 2 games that ZertoN has been the one piling on the pressure, and ZertoN's never been in a situation in either game where he's had to interrupt his eco for a second, and that's just huge. ZertoN, even when he's sometimes losing these military confrontations, and we saw him lose one in this game quite badly, he's been producing villagers and keeping his eco intact very, very easily. And you can afford to occasionally get overrun as long as you're producing and producing and producing. Those stone walls, like you said, have done a good job of preventing the fire lance doing too much damage. Some more villagers going down right now from Mixu. All of those villagers are likely, or at least 1 or 2 of them are going to have gone down. And mounting problems here. Hard to see what Mixu's win condition is there. We see that gold mine. Oh my. If ZertoN spots that gold mine, that will be just the insta GG. Insane that the stone walls now go up. But that was definitely an opportunity there. A good little raid coming in from ZertoN here, with the spears gonna get on top of that stone mine, and at the same time ZertoN with the high APM multitasking also moving in on the base. Lidakor.
Elite Palace Guards are in now, so it's a little easier to hold against the spearmen, but at this point, you see while he's fighting that, he's going to lose the villagers over there. Fire Lancers now coming in for a charge. I think ZertoN is over-investing into cannon now, and he needs population space just for infantry, because if he mixes in some Palace Guards to his own forces, he's gonna be fine. And now ZertoN is going for that Imperial Palace. He was in Song Dynasty the whole time, and now he's going to get his own Fire Lancers in, which makes some sense. He has the advantage, so from this point on, if he just does the exact same unit composition as his opponent, then he's going to win this game. Mixu is going to have gold control issues if he loses this, and look at this. His original economy has just been absolutely devastated. He's down to 78 villagers. This, however, allows him to get quite a lot of cannon and fire lancers on the field, so don't underestimate the strength of this push just yet.
Yeah, that's an interesting point, Lidakor, that it's somewhat of a Pyrrhic victory when you move in and take out your opponent's villages, in that they can maybe use that to gain momentum and over-create military units, and that seems to be what Mixu's done. A lot of military on the field. Having said, the spears now doing some pretty good damage, but all of a sudden, have we seen a bit of a swing in this game, Lidakor? That is a lot of military suddenly on the field for Mixu, and ZertoN all of a sudden scrambling to try and repel this.
ZertoN's unit composition is not there just yet. He was playing with spearmen for a whole time, and now Fire Lancers and Palace Guards are doing work over here. I still believe that if ZertoN shows up with some Fire Lancers, he can be fine, but that is nowhere to be found just yet, and that's starting to become a problem for him. And as you said, if Mixu loses villagers, that just gives him a chance to get more units on the field. Only 69 villagers, very nice for him. The majority of them being on the left side, so ZertoN could push him down to like 20 villagers or so. The problem for ZertoN is that he's only at 54 army, and his units are just considerably weaker compared to his opponent's unit composition.
Yeah, that looked like a classic case of overcommitment there from ZertoN. He had all the momentum and maybe didn't need to keep pushing as much. That being said, definitely still looks to me to be a relatively close game. Either player could take it from here. Oh, he's got a cannon stuck on the wrong side of the palisade wall there, which goes down. But getting some spears on top of the fire lancers again, a few of them going down, and we're just in that typical late game situation here. It's going to be about which player can keep up the macro better and bring it home.
Absolutely. Do note that because the economy is much greater for ZertoN, as he's grinding down the forces of the opponent, he's going to have an easier time replenishing it. So I feel like he's slowly stabilizing. And this is where I want to go back a tiny bit to that Great Wall Gatehouse, which was his Imperial Age landmark, because since he went up with the Great Wall Gatehouse, the only way that he's going to get the Spirit Way for the discount on the Fire Lancers for him is if he goes into Ming Dynasty, and that's very expensive. So he has to create Fire Lancers on a more expensive cost if he decides to go for that. Looks like he doesn't want to go for it if he feels confident in his unit composition. But I feel like ultimately, this combo, Palace Guards and Fire Lancers, is the way to go for Mixu. The only thing that's missing for him is economy.
Absolutely, Lidakor. That economy going to create a significant problem here.
I think the biggest problem for Mixu will be the fact that this economy over here is just wide open. The moment ZertoN spots this, that's 42 villagers out of the 75 eco he has. Luckily for him, ZertoN hasn't spotted that, but the moment there is an overchop here, ZertoN is going to jump on that, and aside from that economy, there is very, very minimal eco behind this one for Mixu. Elite Palace Guards supported by Fire Lances over here, and it looks like it's just Spearman Palace Guards. Sacred Sites are now all under the control of Mixu here, so he's going to force his opponent to make a move, also getting a nice raid in on those Lumberjacks on the right side. But I do believe that ZertoN is going to have enough to take one Sacred Site and just make sure that his opponent doesn't have the Sacred Site countdown going for him.
Yeah, very interesting situation in this game. Oh, we're going to see some cannons drop. These managed to get the Palace Guards all on top of the cannons. And looks, well, at least one is going down there. Two are going down. That was a big mistake from ZertoN, leaving them lying prone in that situation. That was quite costly. Basically lost two cannons for nothing, and now even stand to lose more. He needs to get some... The Palace Guards are on the wrong side of the Palisade Wall because they're off chasing the Fire Lancers.
Oh boy,
and the Fire Lancers are swinging round.
I still believe that ZertoN's unit composition is still terrible here, and he should have gone for Fire Lancers a lot earlier because he was ahead. So if he just does the exact same unit composition as his opponent, he could have already won this game. He's going to take a reasonable fight here though, and you see his opponent is still struggling with population. Ultimately, I feel like for ZertoN, it's a satisfying result to clean this army up over here, and it looks like he's looking to trap all those Fire Lancers in there. That would be a very nice catch, catching like 15-20 of them off guard, and the players are very close to spotting each other. In fact, now ZertoN sees it. ZertoN, if he gets a raid in here, I think that's a game winner for him.
Definitely agree with you there, Lidakor. ZertoN now looking very strong. Look at those villagers chopping right next to each other. Woodline almost gone through, but ZertoN is in the position, more population to start running through and putting some pressure on now. The middle of the map becomes more and more important the later the game goes on. That Sacred Site about to be neutralized. Very important military confrontation happening right now. Cannons firing away at each other from the back, but it looks like ZertoN is making really good inroads in the middle of that fight, cutting through the meat shield. A slight cannon advantage for Mixu, but he took out a lot of units in the middle of that, and now he's going to be able to jump on top of the cannons, and Mixu's slightly overextended here, and these cannons are going to drop very quickly. One goes down, looks like another one's going to go down too, and from this point, Mixu looks suddenly to be in a bit of danger.
He's in a big danger. Now the unit composition for ZertoN is better, because The problem for ZertoN for a long time was that he had no answer to the Palace Guards other than his own, so the Fire Lancer Palace Guard is probably the best combination that Mixu had in terms of units earlier this game, but now that you got some Spearman Fire Lancers in, that's gonna be able to beat Mixu's unit comp. And you see on the left side, we actually have a keep up for ZertoN. He's like, okay, I don't have any units to spare to send over here, I'm just gonna send villagers to make a keep, and I feel like with that, the window is now closed for Mixu.
I definitely agree with you. That window is rapidly closing, if it's not already closed. Pressure is just continuing to build up. In the end, this unit composition is looking quite nice for ZertoN. Those Fire Lancers are... And a lot of the time he's managing to get his units on top of these cannons. Maybe Mixu could have done a better job preparing it. Some villagers going to go down there next to the gold mine.
Wherever you look, Mixu is losing Eco, and Mixu taps out. He had his moments in this set, but ultimately, ZertoN proved to be the better player in both games. ZertoN takes the win 2-0.
Well played indeed for ZertoN just there. A very convincing 2-0 victory, and he moves on to the round of 16. Gladly, this competition today, this day one, is going relatively quick through the games. But very impressive. I think ZertoN is definitely one of the names that you would fancy to go deep in this